My name is James Burk. I'm the executive director of the Mars Society. I'm a founding member of the Mars Society. I first heard about the Mars Society in early 1998. I had just graduated college. I had just moved to Seattle. I had just started a job at Microsoft. And I heard about, and I'd read Dr. Zubrin's book already at that point. And I thought that this was the perfect nonprofit for me to volunteer for. And I'm standing here now 25 years later as our executive director, and it's the honor of my life. I'm member number 705. My membership join date is the same as our organization's birth date, which is August 15th, 1998. For a long time, I carried around my membership card in my wallet. Now I have my iPhone. We have the digital version in the Apple Wallet, so I still carry it around. And I'm proud to be part of what we're trying to do here. So let's talk about what the Mars Society is. Okay, this is our logo, as you know. And it's funny because this year I've been talking to a lot of marketing people about how we can reach out to more folks, how we can reach out to younger folks, how we could reach out to people from all different diverse cultures and people around the world. And everyone always rattles into, you need to change your logo. Like, your logo is too busy. It's not a logo, it's a painting. Well, like, it's iconic at this point. And there's certainly things, it was painted by Michael Carroll in 1998. There's certainly, I think, some things we would do differently today. Like, we wouldn't put, we wouldn't try to represent the astronaut as male or female. I think that's one thing we would do. I love Sojourner, but we've had a lot more sophisticated rovers and now the helicopter. So I would probably retire the Sojourner side of that. Also the HAB in the middle, I think that's pretty awesome because now we have MDRS and FMARS, and that's what they look like. So I would probably update that a little bit, but we'd still have the HAB in the middle. And then on the far right, domes above ground. I think we know we're probably going to be underground. The domes might just be the cupola of the larger base underneath the ground, maybe. But I think it still stands up pretty well. And certainly the heavy lift rocket on the top, that stands up very well, especially this year, where we have SLS and Starship on the way. So I think it's a good logo, but I do think that marketing remains a challenge for us, and we need to appeal to a lot more people. And so that's going to be my goal as executive director, to try to reach out and bring in as many new members as possible. And this is what it's all about: humans on Mars. And when we were redoing the backdrop, we had to redo the backdrop this year, right behind me here. And one of the things that we changed is that tagline, humans to Mars in this decade. It used to say in a decade. So now we say in this decade. But thank you. But I would also say there's one other change we probably should make, and that's to say, and this is from James Melton, it's to say humans on Mars. Okay, because we don't want to just do a flyby. We want to settle the planet. And honestly, I see my job description as making this happen, honestly. So we started the Flashline Station project in 1999. I was in the room when Robert and others voted on it. And in 2000, we built the station. There's a great book that Robert wrote that not a lot of people know about, called Mars on Earth, that talks about the history of what happened when they got to the Arctic with all the components of the base, and how the crane that they were planning to use to hoist up the huge 2-story panels broke on landing. And so they had to improvise a block and pulley system on their own, and a bunch of the people that had flown there to do the construction refused to do that because they said it wasn't safe, and so they left. But Robert and other volunteers still got the thing up. And for me, that story is the heart of the Mars Society, because we were then and we remain a grassroots organization where the volunteers are doing the majority of the heavy lifting. And even at this conference today, you can see that. And so this project represents the birth of the analog research community, which is very large now, and it's international in scope. And there are stations around the world like the FMARS, both permanent and temporary, but we will always be the first ones to have gotten that field of research started. And one of my goals is for us to maintain our leadership role in the analog research community. And of course, we have MDRS. This was the foundation. This photo here was the foundation of our old backdrop. Campus has changed a little since that photo was taken in the early 2000s. This more resembles the campus today. It's grown a bit since the initial HAB. I was part of the crowdfunding campaign for the Science Dome on the far right there. We actually even have one other building that's not in this photo, which is the RAM. And the station in Utah, Mars Desert Research Station, we've had over 250 crews now. We've had over 1,500 crew members. Jessica Watkins just flew to the ISS and just returned recently. She was one of our crew members in 2005. Also, Cyan Proctor, who flew on the Inspiration 4 mission, was a crew commander. So those are the first two MDRS alumni to reach space, and not the last two. And I was fortunate enough in 2018 to be on a crew. It was part of the VR project that I had run that year. A lot of the folks that worked on it and donated to it were on the crew there. And for me, it was the first. I'd already worked on the project remotely for several years, but the day I got to go to Utah and be at the station was very memorable for me. It was a fun mission. It was too short. We just were getting into the swing of things when we had to leave. But I knew that I would want to do it again. I knew that. And a couple of years ago, I applied just through the regular channels. There's me with some of my experiments on that mission. I got to go out in a suit. I brought a little tablet computer that we use. I'm an IT guy by background. I worked at Microsoft for 20 years. But my experiment was basically a wall-mounted tablet display that the crew could get their daily schedule. It would monitor their internet bandwidth, because that was a concern at the time. And it would give them the weather and messages from home through Capcom as texts. And so I had all that working. And it was running off a Raspberry Pi. And it also had a monitor, keyboard, and mouse, so you can sit at it and use it like a regular computer. And took advantage of the fact that we had limited bandwidth, so it would warn you if you were going to get close to that. We call that the HAL because it was like the HAL from 2001, and there's actually a legacy of the computer at the HAB being called the HAL before this experiment. So I was taking that from that, but it was a lot of fun. And like I mentioned, I wanted to go back, and so I applied a couple years ago, I think about 3 years ago. I am going to be on another mission. It's planned for next April, and my crew is mostly from France. My executive officer is an engineer at ESA. She works on the Ariane rocket. And we also have a really brilliant robotics engineer from Canada named Aaron Kennedy. And we have a journalist, Chris Davidson, that's from the Puget Sound area where I live. And so our mission is next April. So we're looking forward to that. It was delayed because of COVID, but we're looking forward to that still. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the other things the Mars Society does. Obviously, analog research is the big one, and we'll have more news to talk about this year and into next year about how we'd like to do more. Obviously, the other thing we do is this conference. So we do the conference every year. We've done it. This is the 25th conference in a row. And when COVID happened in 2020, all the other space organizations canceled their events. But Robert said, nope, we're going to do it. we're going to do our event online, and it's going to be something that no one's ever seen because we're going to do the entire event, all 4 days, all 150 speakers online. And so we all listened to Robert say that. And then he turned to me and he said, James, how are we going to do that? And I said, well, we're going to need to get Zoom. We were an early adopter of Zoom. The Mars Society and many other organizations were using conference call technology throughout the 2000s and 2010s. We had a WebEx account. We had freeconferencecall.com. They were horrible. I came across Zoom in 2017 and immediately thought it was a good tool. Took a little bit of convincing for some people in the Mars Society to use it because some people are a little resistant to new technology, although I'm trying to change that. But it's worked out really well. And in 2020, we put together this conference here, the 2020 conference, which was our first virtual event. Normally we have about, in the 2010s, we had like 250 to 400 people come to our conference every year. That's what we thought would be a good size. And in 2019 at USC, I think we had around 300. In 2020, when we did it online, we had 10,000 attendees. And we also, every year we ask all the speakers we want to have, all the names out there, can you come speak at our conference? And usually, we get about 25% of who we ask. In 2020, we got 100%, all the way up to Elon and Jim Bridenstine, the NASA administrator at the time. And so I was really proud of this because it all came together and there was not a single technical problem. And you can see there on the bottom right, George Whitesides, who at the time was the CEO of Virgin Galactic. I met him in 1999 at the Mars Society conference. He had a talk called Gen X to Mars, and I'm Gen X and he's Gen X. And so I said, Gen X to Mars, fist bump, and he replied back there. So that was a cool moment. So the conference is always great. I think we're really proud of the conference because we get all the talks up online and everyone could watch them. And we have 10 years of the conferences on YouTube on demand for free for the world. I talked yesterday about the Mars VR project. Just briefly, I've been working on this for 5 years. I was the project manager for it at the time when we started it, and really proud of how it's gone. That top left image was on the front page of CNET. There was an artist's rendering of Mars and VR that CNET did, and it ran on the front page of CNET for a couple days. And I was quoted heavily in that article. This was back in 2020 again. But I use that as like my background in my computer and my phone background because I just like that. It kind of looks like me too, so a little bit. We're trying to be cutting edge with this. This is an example of us doing pure research on behalf of the Mars Society to drive things forward for humans to Mars. So the idea with the VR project in a nutshell is that this is a tool we can literally inspire someone by putting on a VR headset that can walk on Mars. And I've had the opportunity to do this, to show the VR application with underprivileged high school or middle school girls in Seattle. 100% of them had fun, 100% of them got it. And it's a really fantastic tool, VR is. But also it tells the story of what we do at the Mars Society, what we do at the MDRS, what analog research is. It's hard to explain what we do in 30 seconds to someone. It's really hard. I've tried, the classic elevator speech. That's hard for the Mars Society because what we do is very deep and profound and complicated. And, we're not literally I'm not literally going to Mars. I'm trying to convince people that we, humanity, should go to Mars. And why? What's the reason for that? For the challenge, for the science, for the future. That's my 30 seconds. Okay, how'd I do? But it's hard, right? It's hard. It's a marketing problem. And so this is a tool, among others, that I think can tell the story in a different way that's more visceral and people get it more. Because my 30-second speech, I've done that to a lot of people, and a lot of people don't get it. So another thing that I'm really proud of is MarsPedia. This is a free online encyclopedia that our volunteers maintain. And it's a project that's been going on. Not a lot of people know about it, which is why I'm talking about it today. It's been going on for about, I would say, 8 years now. And we have volunteers literally working on this every day, improving the articles, writing new content. It's a great resource. And so definitely I would invite anyone here to not only check it out, but help us out. You know, it's public domain too. So that what that means is any of the information there, and there's a lot of unique, really technical, really detailed information about Mars and all the aspects. All of that can be used in other projects for free. There's no copyright. There's no license you need. You can just use the information. We want MarsPedia to be around for like 50 years or longer. So that's the goal with that. I had the opportunity this year to go to the University Rover Challenge for the first time. We run this competition every year at the Mars Desert Research Station in late May, early June. And students from around the world in colleges will design a Mars rover to meet a set of challenges that we give them, a set of criteria we give them. They fundraise for it on their own. They get sponsors on their own. They learn how to use it, how to build it, and how to operate it, and how to, like, all the aspects of robotics and electrical engineering and mechanical engineering and autonomous navigation. They learn all that to compete in this event. And so every year there's like a dozen or more teams that come from around the world to Utah to compete. I mean, you know, there's photos of people, like 400 people standing in front of the hab. And by the way, the town of Hanksville, the population is like 50. So we always overwhelm the town when URC happens. But it was very rewarding. I got to judge this for the first time. And I met a lot of the students, and I'm really proud that we do this event. And Kevin Sloan does a fantastic job, I think. And so this event inspires me, actually, because it's getting people from around the world, young people, engaged and active and learning new things and learning and sharing the vision that we have of settling Mars. And so we want to do more things like that. So at the beginning of this year, when I became executive director, Robert Zubrin and I sat down and talked about some initiatives we could do this year in 2022. And one of them was, could we have a high school level engineering class and competition? And the idea is that, and Robert's going to talk about this tomorrow because we have a whole panel about this. The idea would be that the best engineering programs in the world that are college level have a design class, and that's usually in your senior year. And you'll design a fighter plane or a freighter or something really complicated. You'll work in a team and you'll think about all the aspects that you need to do for designing that system and all the systems within it. So the thought is that if you give a challenge like that to someone way younger, could they rise to that challenge? And so we initially were going to do this for university, high school, junior high, and elementary school, like 5th grade to 8th grade. We were initially going to do 4 levels of this. And this was part of a proposal we made with a major donor. That didn't work out, but we decided to do the program anyway, just to see if it would work. At the high school level, we picked the high school out of those 4. And we were just blown away how well this went. Okay, this was back in July. We picked 40 students. We just kind of did a call for, hey, who wants to participate in this summer program? It's only $50. It's a 6-week summer program. There'll be activities every day. It's remote. Anyone in the world can do it over Zoom. And we got about 40 students. We didn't advertise it at all. We just put it on our normal social media channels. We didn't really widely advertise it. And the students we got were just incredible. We put them into 5 teams organized by the time zone they live in so they could work together in that time zone. We gave them 2 weeks of lectures. So you can see on the right there's our lecturers. Pretty decent lineup. You got Dr. James Bell from here at ASU, who designed all the Mars rover cameras. Than Putzig, who researches water ice on Mars and has a really high quality, high resolution, a heavily researched Mars map of the ice. We have Dr. Greg Autry, Dr. Madhu Thingavella from USC, who's a lunar expert. Ruth Sorok Abramovich, who's an analog astronaut expert from Israel. And then there's Jeffrey Landis, NASA Armstrong, and he's also a science fiction writer. In the middle is Ashwini Ramesh. She's an aerospace engineer that teaches high school in India. She was the MVP of our program, by the way. Ashwini did an amazing job. She was a mentor as well, and you can see her on the student slide, bottom left there. She was a mentor for the winning team in Asia. Then you have Homer Hickam. Homer Hickam had some great stories about growing up in West Virginia in the 50s and building rockets with his friends and winning a National Science Fair medal. We're meeting Werner von Braun. Robert Zubrin, of course, no introduction needed there. And then bottom right, David Poston, the world's foremost space nuclear engineer, I think. Stephen Benner, who's at a conference this year, world's foremost microbiologist, detecting life on Mars. And then that's Larry Kuznets, who worked on the Apollo spacesuits and is a spacesuit expert. And then, of course, Mars Society royalty, Chris McKay and Carol Stoker, both of NASA Ames, both of the Mars Underground. So that's your summer lecturers. Not a bad set of lectures, right? So, and we recorded all their lectures, and they're all on our YouTube channel, by the way. But the students got the benefit of that for 2 weeks. And then we organized them into the 5 teams. They worked together to write a 10-page report. The idea was that you're going to design a Mars mission. You have 30 tons to Mars, free transportation. Where do you land? What hardware do you bring with you? What do you do? What's your crew complement? What are their skills? What are your science objectives? They all rose to the challenge. And then the third part of the program was you get to present for 30 minutes, your report. Then on the next day, you get to, so all 6 teams or 5 teams presented. The next day, you get to critique the other teams for half an hour. And they kept it professional, but they'd had some really scathing critiques of each other. And then the third day, you get to rebut the others' critiques. And they all stood up to the criticism very well, too. So that was it. Like, we really didn't do a lot to prepare them for this. We kind of threw them in the deep end, and they all swam like champion swimmers. So, so obviously this was successful, and we're going to do more things like this. And then finally, I want to talk about the ambassador program, and the gentleman that's speaking right after me, James Melton. This is about his talk as well. He's going to really go in detail on this. But one of the things the Mars Society does is outreach, of trying to get the word out about humans to Mars in different communities. So the goal of the ambassador program is that we're building a cadre of people that are knowledgeable about Mars, that are passionate about Mars, and we give them all the training and resources and materials and merchandise and support that they need to go give talks in their communities around the world to represent us. And so I really feel like this could be a really big deal for the Mars Society as the years go on. We're just getting started with this program, as James will talk about. But it's all about inspiring the next generation and people around the world, but getting to where they are and telling the story in ways that they understand. I'm standing up here, I'm a white male that's 46 years old. I'm not the best person to talk to every community in the world, right? There's a lot of biases that people will see just by looking at me physically. And so building a cadre of ambassadors that represents humanity, that can represent us all well, is the goal here. So my door is always open as executive director. I have In my email signature, I have a link to schedule a meeting with me. I will meet with anybody. And had a lot of meetings this past year just to listen to people, to get advice, to give support to people in the Mars Society and beyond, our partners. And so please reach out to me if there's anything the Mars Society can do to help you with your own personal goals and what you want to do with your career. You know, we always need volunteers. We need volunteers of all skill levels, of all backgrounds to do what we do. You know, we need volunteers to help run the conference. We need volunteers to help the different work parties we have at the MDRS. We need volunteers for things like the high school summer program and other educational programs we do in the future. We need volunteers to help with our websites, to help with our social media, to help with marketing us. And so please reach out and offer your support. And thank you very much. I'll take any questions you guys have. Yes.
Oh, thank you, James. Very interesting activity. In your dealings with the students, especially high school and pre-high school, was there any trouble in keeping the students in line with sticking with the laws of physics and laws of chemistry and so forth, and not having them go off into some science fiction area and just neglect the laws of nature and do what they want?
Surprisingly, no, there was not really, that really didn't come up as an issue. The students, by working together and by experiencing the lectures and some of the other resources we gave them, you know, Robert gave a signed reading the first day of a couple chapters of his book, The Case for Mars, and there were other materials we gave them. They just sponged it all up, and by the end of the 6 weeks, they were little engineers, and they were little Mars engineers. And yeah, that really wasn't a concern. I mean, we certainly, as we were judging it, and Robert will get into some of this tomorrow, I'm sure. As we were judging it, certainly there were things that were a little bit of a stretch. Like one crew was only going to have their crew, or one team, sorry, in their report was only going to have their crew eat potatoes while they were on Mars. But they had calculated how much like calories a human being needs every day, and so they had enough potatoes for them. But you know, we didn't think that, like, we obviously gave them the feedback that's probably not realistic. You get tired of potatoes, just watch The Martian. But no, surprisingly, they rose to the challenge. Yeah. Yes.
On the advocacy mission, public advocacy mission of Mars Society, what is your target audience? How big is it? And what is your strategy for reaching them?
That's a great question. And you're not going to like my answers, because my answer is the world. My answer is all of humanity is my target audience. You know, obviously there's segments within that, right? You know, but we want to reach the young generation. That's the priority. We want to reach the kids that are going to settle Mars, right? The kids that are, you know, the kids that are in high school and college right now are the ones that are going to be the settlers, I believe. And so for me, that's my priority. Also, just, you know, I worked in the IT industry. One of the things I did was try to develop talent, try to like hire young people and train them and give them all the support they need and help them with their career goals and things like that. And I'd love to look at the, you know, the Mars Society members and partners and volunteers that way too. Of, like I said, how can we help you with your own personal goals in life? Like if you want to learn how to be a marketer and want to learn how to do Google Analytics or Google Ads, like come do that with us. Like we need that. We need your help with that. So, so I want us to have wide appeal, but I think the young people most of all. Edward, yes.
Yeah, excuse me. Jim said that he's willing to meet with anyone who wants to build a Mars Society, and he's even willing to meet with me, and he's probably getting sick and tired of it.
Not at all.
No, okay. But we did something this past summer, the first time, and it was quite incredible. Last year, I went to the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas. It's on my bucket list. I made it. And it was an incredible experience. Here you've got thousands of people who support space exploration, who want to go to Mars, of a diverse population of people, a lot of young people, older people like me, white, Latino, Black. And I thought, you know what? These are like regular common people here. Some of them were academics, but most of them were people who were like me, and they loved especially the older Star Trek that I grew up on. And I thought, well, maybe we can do something. Maybe we can have a presence there. Well, so I raised the idea with Jim, and he raised it with Robert, and our president said, go for it. And we went for it big time.
We did.
There were thousands of people there. We had a dozen volunteers. We were given by the organizers of the Star Trek convention a booth, an exhibition booth in the vendors hall where there's hundreds of vendors in an ideal location where people come in to the vendors room to see all the displays. And we had a dozen volunteers there. We had volunteers from Nevada, Henderson, Reno, Colorado, and myself from Salt Lake. And it was an incredible experience. People actually came by the table, and some joined the Mars Society right there. They joined her on the spot. And it went so well. Well, Robert Zubrin spoke to about 150 people, and he brought his books, The Case for Space, 40 of them, ran out of books. I don't know how frequently that happens, but he ran out of books. We could have sold even more. Apparently the organizers were impressed with what we did there, and they certainly got feedback from a lot of the regular Mars convention people who thought it was really good. They really loved Zubrin's talk. And we've been invited to go back next year, not with just a really big, nice display booth, but they've offered us a room for to Jim organize for our VR display, a room.
Yep.
So
It's going to be exciting.
God, this is really good. And the key thing was when Robert was told about this idea, he had three words: go for it. And that's what we do in the Mars Society. We have an opportunity to do something. The things that Jim has mentioned up here already, we go for it. And we're going to be going for it a lot more in the next few years, because there's a lot of people out there, common people, working people, who favor going to Mars, who want to go to Mars, and they simply don't know about the Mars Society. I came upon the Mars Society accidentally, just surfing the net. Oh, this sounds pretty good. I'm going to check it out, see what it's like when the conventions. And I came to the first Mars convention and Society convention, and that was we're reaching out. We can become a much bigger, more effective organization, and clearly we've begun doing that on a big scale.
Thank you very much, Ed. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.